Just before we start the episode, here's a trailer for another podcast. If you like what you hear, go and check it out.
Hello, welcome to Whisper Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Zach Tyler. My pronouns are they, them.
And I'm your host, Dylan Gomez. My pronouns are they, them.
We are creating the safest space for those who have been oppressed, shut out, or let down by society.
Whether you are POC, BIPOC, queer, trans, here nor there, or if you find yourself to be unique in such a way that is not constructed by social norms.
Thick, thin, tall, or small.
If you follow labels, or if you don't,
we love you all just the same, if not more.
You're either with the movement or you're not.
Hate doesn't have a place here.
This is your show.
And we're the voices.
Join us Thavies Weekly as we discuss fine arts, true crime, and mental health.
The perfect throuple. Listen as we speak about relevant topics in today's news.
Interview artists and beautiful people of the sort.
Let us be your home away from home.
The happy place you think about when you close your eyes.
We bring you Whisper Podcast.
Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Joe.
And this is Crime Divers.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Today we have a lot of sword.
Yep, we do. Another one for me.
So again, I've just stopped asking Laura anything about her cases now.
I prefer that now, though, that you don't ask me, because then it's better that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but like sometimes I kind of think, but what if you do one that I already know really well, then it won't be as interesting. I like ones that the other person, I like when you do them and I don't know about them.
Well, that's just the chance you're going to take.
Well, okay, so what's your case called?
It's called The Maid of Dishonor.
Ooh, a bad maid.
Yes, I'm going to say it's not, I'll tell you now, it's not nothing to do with a wedding. Because it sounds a bit wedding-y. Like
I never thought of that. I thought of a maid as in, like, a servant.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but people could interpret it as a maid of, instead of like a maid of honour.
Oh, I don't know.
A maid of dishonour, but no, it's about a servant maid, so yeah.
Oh, well, I was right then.
So you were right.
So where in the world are we?
We're actually in the UK, we're in London.
Do you not keep doing UK ones?
Yeah, well, every time I find an interesting one, I'm like, where is it? And I'm like, well, it's too good not to do it.
No, we're worldwide now, so the UK is fine.
You can venture out to the random places, though.
Oh, yeah, so I get the one with all the names that I can't pronounce, and you...
Well, I had one the other... Oh, no, it wasn't even that bad, was it? Because it was Canada. But, oh, well, anyway, doesn't matter.
So we dive in?
I think we should just dive into this one, yeah.
Right, let me just get comfy.
Get ready.
Let's
you ready?
go.
Are
yeah.
you ready? Cool. Right, so Julia Martha Thomas was a former school teacher who had been twice widowed. Since the death of her second husband in 1873... Oh, by the way, sorry, this is like way back.
Well, obviously it was 1873.
Yeah, this is like, we're in the 1800s.
I like old ones, though.
Yeah, although I think we do kind of cross over into the 1900s, but we start in the 1800s, so this is like an old one for me. I've never done that one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But an old one's good now and again, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, they're all definitely deceased. Murdered or just dead.
Right, okay.
But anyway... So, in 1873, her husband had died, so she lived on her own in Richmond in London. The house that she lived in was a 2-storey semi-detached villa built in grey stone with a front and a back garden. The area was not heavily populated at this time, and her house was close to a pub which was called the Hole in the Wall. Julia was described as a well-dressed lady. She was 54 years old, and she was also said to have like an excitable temperament, and she could be quite eccentric.
Right.
She frequently travelled. She wouldn't even tell her family or friends where she was going for weeks or sometimes months. She would literally just go and then turn up at some point.
Really?
Yeah, and I put it in brackets here. I was like, yeah, there's no such thing as mobile phones, and back then on Facebook, so you can't check in and post your holiday photos.
Very true.
Yeah, none of that. But she was particularly wealthy as well, clearly, because she could just go for her holidays. Oh, no.
What?
Oh, no, maybe she wasn't... No, sorry, she wasn't particularly wealthy. Sorry,
So how did she manage to just pick up and go on holiday then?
Well, maybe I don't... She probably didn't go anywhere that exotic, to be fair, so maybe she could... I don't know. No, so she wasn't particularly wealthy, but she often dressed up and wore jewellery to give the impression that she had that she was.
Right.
So for ages, she'd had a strong desire to hire like a living servant, She obviously wanted to have somebody to help her out around
Oh
the house.
God, is this where the maid comes in?
Yeah. But apparently they said it was as much to do with status, because apparently if you had a maid and a servant, you must be
well off.
Yeah. As well as actual practicality. So she wanted it for status, she wanted it for practicality. However, though, she did have quite a reputation for being quite a harsh employer. She had difficulty finding and retaining servants. And before 1879, Julia had only been able to keep one maid for any length of time. So she obviously wasn't a good boss.
So she was a bit of a bitch then.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So on the 29th of January, Julia actually took on a woman called Kate Webster as her servant. So we're going to talk a little bit about Kate because she's quite important. So she was born in 1849 in a place called Killane, County Wexford, which is in Ireland somewhere.
Oh, I know that in Wexford.
Oh, do you?
We are from Wexford. Our family is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because...
Oh, so we've got Irish...
Yeah, I actually know a couple... Excuse me. I know a couple of people from Wexford.
Oh, right.
And for some reason, I have no idea. I must have done something on the internet and it typed in grandparents' names or something like that.
Right.
And on our mum's side, we come from Wexford.
Oh, right. Well, there you go. Oh, well, I hope we're not related to her.
Well, you never know.
You never
Who
know.
knows?
That'd be quite not funny.
Well, that would be quite a coincidence.
Well, that would be a coincidence, but yeah. So that's where she was born. She had quite a troubled childhood. She was described as a dishonest child. She often was caught stealing.
Right.
And aged 15... Sorry, I've got a little tickle in my throat. I could feel it coming. Age 15, she ended up in jail for theft.
When she was 15?
Yeah, when she was 15, yeah. On her release, she stole money again. And
She obviously never learnt her lesson then?
No, but she actually used that money for her boat fare and she sailed across to Liverpool.
Alright.
Where she then basically planned to start afresh. But once she was in England, she ended up in jail again for theft.
Oh, for God's sake.
She served 4 years that time. So she clearly hadn't really learnt from her, previous mistakes.
Obviously not.
I know. So after she was released in January 1872, she moved to Hammersmith in London. And there she became friends with Henry and Anne Porter. And then in April 1874, Kate actually gave birth to a son. The father is actually unknown because she named 3 different men at various times.
Oh, okay.
One of these men was actually her accomplice in further robberies and thefts.
Right.
But we don't actually know who the father of her son was, but it was somebody, obviously. Because otherwise you're not going to have a kid at that point. Not in the advanced of today's where you can just get a sperm donor, I suppose. Well, I don't know.
You're rambling.
I know. I'm sorry. I ramble sometimes. But anyway.
I think it's funny when you start rambling.
Well, it happens. Leave me alone.
Carry on.
That's my line. You put me off now. So Kate moved around London quite a lot. She used various surnames as well, including Webb, Webster, Gibbs, Gibbons and Lawler, whilst living in a place called...
Kate Lawler?
Yeah, but not the Kate Lawler.
I was going to say, she was on Big Brother.
Yeah, not that Kate Lawler. While living in Teddington, she was arrested and convicted again in May of 1875 of 36 charges of larceny, which is...
36 charges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's larceny, so that's like theft of personal property. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison then, and not long after leaving prison, she was again arrested for theft. And
come on, Kate.
I know.
For God's sake.
Exactly. And she was sentenced to another 12 months.
Sort yourself out.
I know. So when she was in prison that time, her son was looked after a friend called Sarah Crease. She was working as a cleaner for a woman called Miss Lauder. So in January 1879, Sarah actually fell ill, so Kate stood in for her and worked for this Miss Lauder. So Miss Lauder, she knew that Julia Thomas was looking for a servant, so she actually recommended Kate to Julia. So Julia didn't really look into Kate's background at all. She just...
I was going to say, did they not do checks? But
No.
if she came recommended, then...
Yeah, she came recommended, so she didn't really bother to look into her. She just took, as I was like, okay, she must be okay. But, I think maybe she should have after what's about to happen next.
Well, just with her background, I think
Well, yeah, that, but...
checks should have been done, because I wouldn't want a thief working for me.
No, exactly, and it's obviously going to get a bit worse now. So at first, everything was fine. I mean, she came and she did her job, but it didn't actually last that long. Julia basically started criticising Kate's work, And we actually got a couple of sort of statements from Kate she later actually said that, quote, "At first I found her a nice old lady, but I found her very trying, and she used to do many things to annoy me during my work. When I had finished my work in my room, she used to go over it again after me and point out places where she said I did not clean, showing evidence of a nasty spirit towards me." Apparently, though, like, Julia even asked, like, her friends to come and stay with her, and she didn't like to be alone with Kate at this point. She was becoming more and more resentful towards Julia because, you know, criticising your work, she's probably getting quite pissed off.
Well, yeah, I'd be getting pissed off with it.
You know, if somebody comes round and just moans at you, like, leave me alone. So Julia eventually decided that Kate, you know, her time was done. She, you know, she needed to be fired, basically. So Julia actually wrote down in her decision down in her diary, and it was like actually what we know now would have been her last entry in her diary, which said, Kate. I don't know what.
Lord, I can't read her right.
I know, but basically, Catherine to leave. So she must have called her Catherine. I mean,
well, Kate, Catherine.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, it was, you know, that was it. She was going to tell her that she was done. So Kate, though, did actually manage to persuade her, like, to keep her for an extra 3 days until Sunday the 2nd of March. Kate normally had Sundays off as like a half day, so she would sort of work, you know, in the morning, but she'd have the afternoon off. She was then expected back to help Julia get ready for an evening service at her local church, but Kate had been in the pub. And she was late back.
Right.
So they had an argument, meaning that Julia was late in leaving for the church. So when Julia got to the church, she told members of the church, you know, that the reason she'd been delayed was basically because of her servant had caused her to be late by coming back late to help her get ready. But then Julia returned home that night to confront Kate again. So, according to Kate's eventual confession, this is what happened next. So, obviously, Kate did actually confess to this. So, this is actually what she said that happened. She said, quote, "Mrs. Thomas came in and went upstairs. I went up after her and we had an argument, which ripened into a quarrel, and in the height of my anger and rage, I threw her from the top of the stairs to the ground floor."
Oh, wow.
I know. "She had a heavy fall and I became agitated at what had occurred. Lost all control of myself, and to prevent her screaming and getting me into trouble," I mean, I'm pretty sure you're going to get into trouble already, but okay, "I caught her by the throat, and in the struggle she was choked, and I threw her on the floor. She was dead." That's what she said. Then she also said, so Kate tried to dispose of the body the best that she could. She later described her actions of what she did. So, quote, "I was determined to do away with the body the best I could. I chopped the head from her body with the assistance of a razor."
Eh? How can you chop a head off with a razor?
I have no idea. That's what she said, though.
She must have been hacking it, like...
Yeah, and she must have been, because she assisted with a razor, which I used to cut through the flesh afterwards. I also used the meat saw and the carving knife to cut the body up, and I prepared the copper. A copper was... like, it was what they used to heat up water. So I actually saw a picture of it. It's just like a sort of brick kind of thing, and it's obviously got like a lid, and they must like put water in it and boil it up. So I suppose it's like a modern day boiler, maybe, that, you know, how we have boilers that heat our hotter water.
Right, okay.
It was that, like, so she did that. So she prepared that, and with water to boil the body to prevent identity. And as soon as I had succeeded in cutting it up, I placed it in the copper and boiled it. I opened the stomach with a carving knife and burned as much of the parts as I could.
Oh, that must have stunk.
I bet. But, like, how do people have, like, the stomach to even do that, though?
Can I just say, you got a cheek moaning at me for telling you gruesome stories when you're just doing the same thing.
I know, that was a bit gruesome, wasn't it?
That was very gruesome for you.
It was, wasn't it? So over the next couple of days, Kate continued to clean the house and wash Julia's clothes so things seemed normal, but behind the scenes she was packing the dismembered remains into a black bag and a wooden box. She was unable to fit the head and one of the feet into the containers, so she disposed of them separately, throwing the foot on a rubbish heap, and the head was buried under the hole in the wall stables, because there must have been stables next to the pub.
Right.
So she'd buried her head under there. And, you know, so Julia's... the head was buried under the stables, a short distance from Julia's house, and her head wasn't actually discovered until 131 years later, which
Really?
I'll explain later how it was.
Wow.
Found. But for 131 years it lay there
Oh my
undiscovered.
God.
I know. So on the 4th of March, Kate travelled to see her old neighbours, the Porters, that she'd met when she'd first moved.
Yeah.
Or after she'd been in prison a few times and moved here. She hadn't seen them for 6 years. She still had the black bag with some of the remains with her, so she must have been carrying it around.
What?
Yeah.
Why? So she had a black bag with...
Some of the remains.
So,
Yeah, she was carrying it around with her.
Okay.
Not really sure why.
yeah, Kate's not
I know.
quite right.
No, she's not. So she actually introduced herself as Mrs. Thomas to the Porters because she hadn't seen them for 6 years. You know, she basically had said that she'd got married.
Oh, right, okay.
So didn't introduce herself as Miss Thomas, saying that she'd married, she'd had a child, but then had been widowed. And she'd also been left a house in Richmond by an aunt, which really she hadn't.
Yeah.
But that's what she was saying. She insisted that Mr. Porter, along with his son Robert, came along to the pub with her. So they went to the pub, but along the way she actually dropped the black bag, and that was suspected to be in the River Thames. The Porters were in the pub. Well, she did. What have I written? Oh my God, I can't read my own writing. Sometimes I really need to take care of my writing.
Where are you?
Along the way, she dropped the black bag, suspected to be in the River Thames.
The Porters were in the pub. It was never recovered.
Oh, never recovered, yeah. So the black bag was never recovered.
It's alright, I'll just read your writing.
Sorry, thank you, I know. Well, I get annoyed writing sometimes, so I just...
Well, type then.
I can't type.
Well, you can't write either.
Well, I can. When I've got the patience to write, I can. I just get annoyed sometimes. So then Kate then asked Robert to help her carry a heavy box from Julia's house to the station. As they crossed Richmond Bridge, she dropped the box into the Thames, like by accident. Like she just went, dropped it.
Right,
in,
yeah.
You know, like a total accident, or make it out like an accident.
Yeah.
She was able to explain it away to Robert, and it didn't arouse his suspicions, so he didn't really think anything of it. He was just like, okay, fair enough. But this is where I think our downfall happened, because the following day the box was found washed up in shallow water next to the riverbank. It was found by a man called Henry Wheatley. He was a coal porter and he'd just been driving past. He recovered the box and opened it, finding what looked like body parts wrapped in brown paper. So he immediately reported it to the police, and the remains were examined by a doctor. The head was missing along with a foot, so all the body parts apart from the foot and the head were missing. And I think that was just...
Did they find the foot later?
Yeah, the foot was found, but like I say, obviously the head wasn't at this point. But it was later assumed that they had been thrown separately in the river by Kate, so at this point they just thought they'd been chucked in separately and probably weren't going to find them. But at first the body parts could not be identified. There was actually a suggestion that it could have been from a young person with very dark hair. An inquest was opened on between the 10th and 11th of March, and that resulted in an open verdict on the cause of death. And the unidentified remains were laid to rest in Barnes Cemetery on the 19th of March. So at this point, they had no idea that this was Julia. Mm-hmm. They couldn't identify it because the remains had obviously been boiled, which clearly takes away like the DNA and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. But Kate, she was continuing to live in Julia's house at this point. She was actually posing as her with tradesmen. She had made an agreement with a man called John Church to sell all Julia's furniture to furnish his pub. By the time the removal horse and cart, because bear in mind we're in the 18th century, arrived on the 18th of March, the neighbours then were becoming more and more suspicious as they hadn't seen...
I was wondering that. The neighbours not wondering where she is.
They hadn't seen Julia for 2 weeks, but I'm kind of surprised that they were suspicious at this point, because the fact that I'd said to you earlier that she
kept going away
on holiday, that maybe that's where they thought she was, but no, they became suspicious.
Maybe when she went away on holiday she didn't go away for that long. Maybe she only went away for a few days at a time.
True. So our next door neighbour, Miss Ives, actually asked the delivery men who had ordered the removal of all the goods, and they actually replied, Mrs. Thomas, and pointed towards Kate.
Oh, right.
Clearly she knew. Well, you're not Mrs. Thomas. So Kate realised that she had been exposed at this point, and she literally fled. She fled immediately. She caught a train to Liverpool and travelled from there to her family home at Enniscorthy, which is in Ireland.
Right.
The police were called and to search Julia's home, and there they discovered bloodstains, burnt finger bones in the the hearth, they call it. I don't know if that's like in the boiler place, and fatty deposits behind the copper. as well as a letter left by Kate giving her home address in Ireland. That was stupid.
Yeah, duh.
So they immediately put out a wanted notice giving a description of Kate and her son, and detectives from Scotland Yard soon discovered that she'd fled back to Ireland. So the Royal Irish Constabulary, they traced her to her uncle's farm, and that's where she was actually arrested on the 29th of March. Scotland Yard escorted her back to London.
To London.
Yeah. And on hearing of the crime, though, that she was charged with, her uncle actually refused to let her son stay.
Why?
I know, because I'm thinking it's not her son's fault.
How old is he still little?
Yeah, I mean, I must have still be little. There was never any really reference of like his age
But
or whatever.
still.
I mean, he would have still been young, but he needed care.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he refused to let him stay. So the authorities had to send him to a local workhouse until they could find a place for him in an industrial school. So I was like, oh, what a wee shame. Cause
Poor kid.
Yeah,
He's actually got family to look after him, and he won't look after him.
I know. I thought that was quite awful, to be honest. But, you know, maybe it was just the shame on the family or something. And
Who knows?
I don't know, but I felt quite sorry for him. But Kate, she then went on trial on the 2nd of July in 1989, and over the course of six days, the court heard from witnesses piecing together how Julia Thomas met her death. Kate tried to actually, tried to implicate John Church, the man that was the removal man.
All right.
Yeah, she actually tried to implicate him, and also her former neighbour, Mr. Porter. And I was like, but that was maybe your friend.
Yeah.
So basically, she was trying to worm her way out of it completely.
Yeah. She was just trying to blame anybody that she could.
Yeah.
She obviously had no loyalties to anybody.
Well, exactly. But I mean, both of them had solid alibis, so they were quickly ruled out of that completely. Good. Which was good. So she did plead not guilty, but a piece of evidence from a woman named Maria Durden, who told the court that Kate had visited her a week before the murder, saying that she was going to Birmingham to sell some property, jewellery, and a house her aunt had left her. So because she had said that, they decided that the jury interpreted that as a sign that it was premeditated.
Right, yeah.
You know, it wasn't just like a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah.
She had thought it through.
She planned it out.
Yeah. So she basically was convicted after about an hour of deliberating. They didn't, take long to decide that she was guilty.
Good.
But as the judge was about to pass sentence on Kate, was asked if there was any reason why she shouldn't be put to death. And she then claimed that she was pregnant.
Oh.
And that was her attempt to avoid the...
But she wasn't pregnant.
The death penalty. Well, no, but what actually... I don't know if this was happening. I mean, probably not, because we'd have pregnancy tests, I suppose, in this day and age. But they basically had to have 12 women, along with a surgeon, sworn in to the case. Like, you swear in the jury.
Yeah.
So they had them sworn in, so that they could actually examine her. So they took her to, like, a private room.
What, 12 women?
12 women and a surgeon. I'm not sure how they did this. It doesn't describe how they actually examined her, but...
To see if she was pregnant?
But yeah, so they swore them into the case, and yeah. But, apparently that took, like, minutes to come to the conclusion that she was not pregnant.
Okay.
So I don't know what they did to decide that, and I don't know what 12 women needed to be there to
surely you would just need maybe 2 witnesses or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be enough. Like, I don't think... And why was it all women? Well, maybe it depends on what the examination was, I suppose. Maybe, like...
Well, maybe for her privacy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, for her, decency,
like her dignity.
Yeah.
Dignity, maybe. I don't really know. I mean, obviously, maybe that was a dumb thing back in those days.
Well, but the way I see it is, you're a murderer, so you don't deserve any dignity.
Well, exactly. I mean, let's say maybe the surgeon that did it and a couple of witnesses probably would have been sufficient. But
yeah, I
that
would
was
think so.
Clearly, what they did. But yeah, so yeah, she was of course not pregnant. She did obviously appeal her sentence, but she was unsuccessful. And before she was executed, that's when she made her 2 statements confessing to the crime. So one statement was her basically trying to say that it was one of the fathers, the one that she got in trouble with.
Right, yeah.
She was trying to say that it was him and she went along with it, but then she must have then decided that she decided to basically take all the blame herself. So that's when the second statement, so remember when I had to describe to you what happened, that's when she did her second statement.
Right.
Then. So... The following day after doing her statement, at 9:00, she was hung. And she died.
Well, obviously.
Obviously. And she then was buried in an unmarked grave, because I'm assuming that back then they didn't get a marked grave when they were murderers and stuff.
Well, they deserve it, do they?
No, totally not. But it was actually like a really massive case at the time. And she actually ended up with a waxwork at Madame Tussauds.
What? How did she get a waxwork?
Exactly, but it was so, like, honestly, like, from what I read, I mean, it was quite a big case. I mean, people, like, even travelled over from Ireland just to come and, like, witness, like, the case and stuff. It was obviously quite a big deal at the time. But yeah, so she ended up with waxwork alongside, like, Burke and Hare, and a few other notorious kind of murderers. There's no longer now, like, it's no longer on display now, but it was, like, on display for quite a long time, apparently.
At Madame Tussauds?
Yeah, I'm not sure specifically which Madame Tussauds, but yeah, maybe London one, actually, because if it was in London,
well, is there more than one? I thought there was only a Madame Tussauds, and then in Blackpool there's like a Louis Tussauds.
Well, there's one in America that I've been to as well. I mean, maybe in those days, maybe there wasn't more than one, but
doesn't matter.
I'm assuming it was London. But yeah, so
the case was in London, wasn't it? So
yeah, so they must have had like a section with like notorious murderers and killers and stuff, and there was Kate Webster, along with Burke and Hare and who else, a few others. But, yeah.
Wow,
I know. So back to the discovery of the skull.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were going to tell me about.
Yes. So in 1952. A man, or a famous man that we know, who's called Sir David Attenborough, and his wife Jane, they actually bought a house between the former cottages, or Julia's cottage where she stayed, and the Hole in the Wall pub. The Hole in the Wall pub actually closed in 2007, but Sir David Attenborough actually bought it in 2009 so that he could redevelop it.
Alright.
So on the 22nd of October 2010, workmen carrying out excavation work at the rear of the old pub, they uncovered a dark circular object which turned out to be a woman's skull.
Oh, wow.
It had been buried underneath the foundations that had been in place for at least 40 years. So, I mean, it must have been buried, and then like stuff is built on top of it. And then they've obviously, taken it out, doing whatever they're doing. And it was immediately speculated at this point that the skull was Julia Thomas's, because obviously this case must have been quite famous. So,
yeah.
And obviously where it was.
And they knew that the head was missing.
So they did speculate that it was her skull quite quickly. And the coroner asked the police to actually carry out an investigation into the identity of the skull's owner. So, I mean, when the coroner found that the skull had fracture marks consistent with Kate's account of throwing Julia down the stairs, and it was found to have low collagen levels consistent with it being boiled, because she had she had said that she'd boiled her head. So in July 2011, the coroner concluded that the skull was Julia Thomas's. DNA testing wasn't possible because she died childless and had no relatives that could be traced at that point. So there was also no record of where the rest of her body was buried, sadly. So we don't. So they had to bury her head separately.
Why don't we know where her body is?
There's just no record of it. We don't know where they buried it. I mean, there's nothing in the records to say where at the time that they did it.
Oh.
So the coroner recorded a verdict of unlawful killing, and the skull was buried in an unmarked grave at Richmond Cemetery on the 24th of August 2011. So, yeah.
Well, that's quite mad though, eh? Like, imagine finding the skull all those years later.
I know.
And not by him.
Well,
but
not by him, but because of him.
Yeah, because of David Attenborough.
Yeah, I know. So,
how cool.
I know. So it's, it's obviously quite a popular, the crime at its time was quite, I say got quite a lot of publicity at the time of it. And then a famous person that's bought, sort of property there, then finds the skull, makes it probably even more famous now because of that as well. So I just feel what a shame, like not even getting buried as a whole.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just can't. I'm not very happy that we don't know where her body is. Well, the rest of her.
Well, no, I mean,
And what about her foot? Where's that?
Oh, did I not say that? That was found on a rubbish pile. That was like a rubbish tip she'd dumped on, and that had been found.
That's so disrespectful. I mean, it's disrespectful to kill somebody in the first place, but to do that to their body and just chuck it away like a bit of rubbish.
I know, but I was just wondering to myself, like, how many like potential, there could be like people's remains like scattered all over the place.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about them, finding her skull, and I was thinking that, it just goes to show that there could be human remains anywhere.
Oh yeah,
and there is so many people in this world that are missing. So,
and that's scary. And then maybe years later, because of coincidence by things getting the earth obviously gets removed, or they're building stuff, that they do find like all these sort of remains and stuff. And I mean, people that say that have been missing now, in years to come, will somebody find them?
I know,
just like that. 131 years later.
I know, yeah.
So it was, it was a long time.
Oh well, thank you for that.
That was my case.
So thank you for listening, and if you would like to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram and Twitter.
At crime_divers_pod.
We have a Facebook page.
Crime Divers Podcast.
You can email us at
crime_divers_pod@outlook.com.
We have a YouTube channel.
Crime Divers Podcast.
You're doing well.
I know.
And if you'd like to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/crimedivers, where you can get early access to episodes, 2 episodes, bonus episodes a month, and tiers start from as little as £1 a month. And also, if you like our show,
subscribe, rate, review.
thank you. Bye.